Welcome to the Shift Report, the podcast from MCentric and the MCentric Foundation. MCentric is the go-to information and resources hub designed exclusively for the emergency medicine community. We regularly host key leaders from the field who share their insights and experience. Our goal is to inform our listeners and to encourage you to use what you learn to improve your practice and improve yourself. To learn more, please visit us at mcentric.org. Today, we welcome Adam Goodcoff. Dr. Goodcoff practices in Washington, D.C., but is better known as CEO of Medfluencers, which he will tell us about today. He received a medical degree from the West Virginia University School of Osteopathic Medicine and trained in emergency medicine at the University of Illinois at Chicago. He has turned his extensive clinical communications experience into the largest medical social media marketing agency. Welcome, Adam.
I appreciate that, so thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and thanks for taking the time to chat with us. We like to start out sort of how you got to where you are. You're an emergency physician, as are many of our listeners and members. What drove you to that clinically?
You know, on the clinical side, it's funny. I've been interested in kind of acute care medicine, emergency medicine for as long as I can remember. I think like many folks, I started as a lifeguard. I really enjoyed, and I actually did have some saves, which I think most folks go through their career and really you work at a town pool, you never see anything. But I don't know, Black Cloud or whatever it was. But we had some good stuff when I was younger. I kind of got interested, and then I got into EMS, and I actually I grew up in New York, and so in New York State, you have to be it might be 18 or something to be an EMT, but there was a workaround. You could be what's called like a certified first responder, and you could do that through a fire department. So I actually became a firefighter, which I admittedly did not enjoy the fire part, but I thought the EMS was great. And so I would do all, the EMS calls. It was a volunteer job. And so I did that through high school, got some experience and realized that, kind of had a knack for that area. It didn't, like a lot of my friends at the age, like it didn't gross me out, so to speak. I was interested in helping people, and I thought that kind of acute care phase, especially out in the field, was really exciting. So I went on to get my EMT. I worked as an EMT through college, right up to the day that I left for med school, and it was kind of a natural progression. Everyone comes in, someone wants to be the neurosurgeon, and someone, whatever in the med school class. It was always emergency medicine for me, and really never wavered from that. It was kind of just, like I said, a natural progression from where I started and where my interests lie and how my personality fit.
Yeah, we hear the EMS path pretty commonly. Going back to the lifeguard path is not quite as common, but it certainly makes sense, particularly if you were one of those lifeguards who got out of the chair and did some saves. So that's great. Now, you still practice clinically and in a busy place, but you do more than that. You operate, and as I said in your introduction, the largest medical social media marketing agency. Tell us what that is and what that does and how you ended up doing that.
Yeah, it's another interesting path. So, Medfluencers is a healthcare influencer marketing agency, and I always like to start the conversation by saying this is not the influencer with the swimsuit, with the travel trip, but this is a different space. And I really, we've kind of coined the term digital opinion leader. I call, our folks at the physicians and HCPs that we work with, healthcare educators. It is yes, there's an element of marketing, but it's a much more educational approach. I always say it's not take this pill, right? And it's more, here are the ways that this could benefit a particular patient audience. Maybe this is content that's directed to HCPs. So, hey, here's some cutting edge research on a new therapy that is out. Awareness, right? Awareness among the communities and really from an educational lens. And so that's what we aim to do at Medfluencers, and we come at that from a compliance-based approach. So there's a lot of ways to go wrong in this space, and I suppose I should back up really, like, why did I do this? I've been doing social media for like 8 years and kind of saw the writing on the wall of how this had all developed. I'm very into education. I've been educating. I did a teaching fellowship, actually extended medical school a year, and so I've always enjoyed educating. And I took to social media to start doing that. And along the way, social media had developed. There was more interest in this. And it was around the time of residency when I really started to say, someone's got to come together and help set the ground rules on how to do this right, especially for those who are commercializing this, right? It's expensive. We're doing a podcast today. We have expensive microphones, headphones, a computer, lighting, right? There's a lot that goes into doing this in a way that you can actually convey that message to folks where they want to listen, they want to consume the content. And so there were more and more folks that were going down that pathway. And in my head, someone had to step up and find a way to do that and almost make a home for these HCP influencers or digital opinion leaders, as we call them. And that's really what we've aimed to do at Medfluencers. And so, we work with over 400 digital opinion leaders across various specialty areas. We do everything from, what we call disease state awareness, which is maybe raising awareness around heart disease. And as things as complicated as actually delivering a branded message. So when you see kind of that boring scrolling information, which is actually really important on TV, maybe there's a new, as I mentioned, oncology is one that's always got something coming out. So maybe we're making content for oncologists who are busy in community practice. They may not be at the latest conference. So maybe this short video can get their attention and let them know that, hey, there's a therapy that may benefit some of your patients, and you should take some time to read this new journal article about it. You should explore the materials from the MSLs and so forth. So hopefully it's not too much detail, but that's kind of a broad description of, I guess, how I got here and why we're doing this and what we're doing there.
No, that it's not too much detail at all. In fact, we probably can unpack this a little bit more. That those of us who have children who are teenagers and above see the influencer world that you mentioned of, cosmetics and products and shoes and clothes and whatever else. And that's I think most of us don't realize how big that part of the economy is. It sounds like you are taking it to the medical world, but in a way that is evidence-based and scientific and grounded in fact and science. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, absolutely. I say that while I may work part-time, I like to bring a lot of what I have learned and experienced through medicine into this kind of marketing and business world. One of those things is an ethics board. So we actually have a physician ethics board that reviews every piece of marketing material or content that we aim to create at Medfluencers to make sure, obviously I'm conflicted. I run the company, so I have an interest in making it go live. So we built an external board and we have physicians on there who review the content and make sure that there is no ethical concern around that particular indication or whatever that request may be before we're making content. We have multiple stop gaps in there, and that's from an ethical lens. There's from a regulatory lens. There's legal. So there are a lot of things in place to do this right, and you're spot on. One of the big passions from an education lens is fighting misinformation. If you open up TikTok, and not to pick on it as a platform, there's tons of folks recommending that you misuse certain medications, that if you take something twice and three times, whatever, it can have this effect. And there's no degree, there's no credibility, there's nothing there, right? And we have this conversation on the industry side all the time. It's important to be there in these conversations, right? It may not be always about driving some type of conversion from a business standpoint. It may just be about contributing to the conversation with a reputable voice. And there's value in that. There's credibility in that when you have an HCP with a professional background who's providing accurate information that's been vetted and verified onto social media. So that is an accurate description.
So you've built quite a business, and you've 400 or so physicians and other providers involved in developing and putting out content. Who are your typical clients? How do you get engaged? How does someone come to you and say, I want my idea marketed? And in fact, I'm sure there are times you say no. And how does that work?
Yeah, we are actually very selective. Just like we are selective on the digital opinion leader side. It's not to say that there aren't more than 400 great HCPs out there, but we have a very strict process because of the clientele that we work with. And to answer your question, it's very broad who comes to us. Really, anyone with an interest in healthcare or some type of a credentialed creator delivering a powerful message. And it's up to us to sort through those requests very diligently, right? You can imagine as soon as we popped up on the radar, every single health supplement in the world that claims every benefit was knocking at our door saying, doesn't matter the price tag, we want it. We want your doctor's stamp of approval, right? So it's up to us in a way to kind of gatekeep or police those type of requests. And as I mentioned, through an ethics board, through our internal review teams, really vet and verify every opportunity that's coming in. But the bulk of the work that we do, I would say, is with the kind of large pharma world, device world that you see out there. Can't go into specific names, but for the most part, if you're seeing a campaign on social media with an HCP influencer, a digital opinion leader, even on the medcom side as well, just kind of talking about updates, disease state, that type of stuff, where we may have had a hand in that campaign there. So lots of pharmaceutical folks interested in this. Again, even legacy drugs, things that are around that maybe have a new indication, just a reminder of a reason why we might want to consider something. And again, the fun stuff is some of the disease state awareness. Now we're getting interest from rare disease spaces because it's an amazing way to reach patients who were previously underdiagnosed, undertreated, underreferred. There's a lot there. And then I personally have an interest in the device world. I find medical devices fascinating. I think the innovation and just really the excitement in that space is very cool to be a part of. And so we have some really interesting partners that we work with there as well. And then I guess the last arm that's important to include is we have amazing agency partners. So they're the agency world, for those who are new to this space, is there are these very large medical marketing agencies that do the work that we're talking about here on a much larger scale: TV, print, traditional web-based media, the actual what does the visual look like, kind of the whole process. They partner with the clients to help bring these ideas to life. And so there are a lot of those folks who we work very closely with who come to us and we have a relationship. And they'll say, well, we're putting together this massive program, but we'd love to bring some physicians in as a part of the messaging. And so we work side by side with them.
Yeah, and I think, we it's almost noise in the background. The advertising of medical things. We're a little unique, I think, among countries in allowing pharmaceutical ads on TV. But I mean, if you go to conventional media or even new media, the number of ads one sees for drugs, and other things directed at patients is fairly remarkable. And it sounds like you're not doing that, but participating in that space.
Yeah, and that is the tough line to walk. And it's funny, I get a fair amount of flack from folks in this space, which I understand. A lot of folks don't understand pharma, and I think this is a nice pause to take. Something that I've learned, I continue to learn new lessons outside of medicine and being in this space. And one of the most impactful for me is that we grow up and we think pharma is the bad guy. Pharma's raising the prices. Pharma's here to make money. They don't care about anything else. We can get into a long discussion about who's here to make the money. But what I will say is that the people on the ground, the people in kind of the mid-level leadership that are driving the innovation in these programs, that is not their mission. These folks are really incredibly passionate about helping patients. You, myself, every physician, I think, would be truly shocked if you got to meet some of these internal folks and how well educated they are on these disease states. There are individuals in pharma, especially as we get into rare disease. Like I have to read papers and study up to go and have a conversation with them because they are so well versed in that area, and they really one of the interesting things of pharma, the beauty of a larger budget, is they get to meet these patients, right? They can pay to bring them in and do a panel and hear their stories and understand their troubles. And so when they're designing these marketing materials, and we could take kind of the big dollar players away, but some of these folks that are doing it for the right reason, like they are coming at this from a lens of how does this change someone's life for the better? How does this potentially help them with this chronic disease that they suffer from? How does this potentially bring them closer to a cure if this is in the malignancy space? It's really interesting, and so I think it's really shifted my perspective of kind of what the nefarious goals of pharma are versus what these folks really are out there trying to do. It's been pretty eye opening to be a part of that. But to your point, Till, we are much more focused. We're not running kind of broad ads on TV. One of the beauties of digital opinion leaders is that they affect influence, if you will, or reach a certain group. And so we can deliver a tailored message. I keep picking on oncology because it comes up all the time, but we can try. There can be let's say, a new chemotherapeutic agent or a biologic for breast cancer. So we can go to the community and to those digital opinion leaders who speak to that community in the breast cancer space and help share out the messaging that, hey, there's a new indication, there's new data on this new study, you should take a look, right? Maybe you have a patient that could benefit from this. And I think oncology is a great example because there's not always one right answer. It gets very complicated as to who responds to what markers they're expressing, what their genetic break. I mean, now that we get into genomics, it gets really wild. So there's not always one right answer. And I think that's something that we come back to all the time, is it's important to get this information out there because especially oncologists, they're so busy practicing, their schedules are out of control. They may not get a chance to read the update, and someone could really benefit from that.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting and complicated space. I think you and I both at the bedside, when we hear of a patient who's got some unfortunate complex cancer and is on a regimen, frequently the regimen is something I've never heard of and need to go spend some time looking because it's changed very quickly. And they say it by an acronym usually that is not understandable. And so
Right.
this is a space that, and you can imagine if you're an oncologist in day-to-day practice, keeping up with that can be quite difficult. We've talked with a number of guests about wellness in the space of emergency medicine, and there are all kinds of elements of this, but the social media and the disinformation space, and even the occasional vitriol and anger at physicians or scientists, you and I aren't going to solve all that today. But what are your perspectives on the use of social media? And for our listeners, we are developing a not-for-profit arm to try to get ahead of this and get ahead of burnout in our clinicians. What can you tell physicians and other clinicians related to social media and how to use social media for good?
It's an interesting question that actually it goes pretty deep, and there's two sides there. I think first off, it's important to recognize that there's an element of wellness around utilizing social media. I have a course, and we were talking about this earlier. It's called Healthcare Social Media Academy, but we go through helping clinicians to develop a digital footprint and participate in social media. It's not necessarily from a marketing perspective. Maybe they're academic physicians, they want to share content, but there's actually a whole section in that course dedicated to wellness because it is so easy to lose yourself and your time in social media. So what I always say is recognize if you're choosing to participate that you have control of when you want to use the app, when you don't. You should not feel pressured into, always making content, always commenting, always replying, right? You need to set boundaries. And that can be very difficult because these platforms are made to be incredibly addicting. So that's something worth noting. Personal wellness around social media and setting boundaries. I think on the second side, there is something, and wellness is a complex topic, and burnout. But I think a feeling of helplessness is a pretty uniform kind of thread that pulls through burnout, where it's like nothing I do matters, nothing that I do will change the outcome. I just have to come in and do my job. Nobody listens to me anyway. And so there's ways to intervene on those feelings along the way to give yourself back some authority. And I think one of those can be participating in social media. But what I will caution again is it's not an outlet for complaining. That is how you get into those negative downward spirals of encounters, right? If I go on after a long shift and, I'm posting a story, worst shift of my life, so many patients per hour, dangerous conditions, right? That's not helping anyone. Like, no, we need to talk about those things, but the forum does not need to be a public communication, in my personal opinion. What I think can be a positive or channeling some energy into a positive space is if, maybe someone's passionate about wellness, they want to create wellness content on social media. Here's how I balance my life as an emergency physician. This was my week. This is my schedule. These are the things that I did to introduce wellness into my life. Okay, that's a positive outlet, right? And that's a way that we can channel some positive energy into social media. On the other side, a lot of folks feel fulfillment from giving back to others. And so that may be from the education arm. And that's where, a lot of when I talk about my course and the things that we work on there, a lot of folks feel fulfillment by giving back the area of expertise. Maybe they're an airway expert, they're a skin expert, whatever it might be, sharing some content in that arm, right? And helping to educate others. There's something rewarding about giving someone else education, watching the light bulb moment. And so if someone's interested in participating in the educational space, I think that can help from a wellness perspective and burnout. But it is complex. It is a broad topic, and I'll park it there and let you comment.
Thank you for that, and you're right. It is complex, so we won't we won't go into the 5 hours of discussion that it could be. You through your work are developing educational material, and you mentioned a course. You do have a course releasing January 1st, focused on social media. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it's been a really fun process. I've been working on this for about 5 years. It started out as a question of, well, how do you do social media, right? I've been early to this. I've seen an entire platform, which is TikTok, develop and peak and start to decline. I've been on Instagram and YouTube. And so at first it was just about bringing that expertise to the mix for someone who wants to be on social media. But I realized along the way, it's a lot more broad. There's a lot of these academicians at large institutions that want to get the word out about what they're working on. They want to share updates and exciting, interesting tidbits or just make themselves a more effective digital communicator, but aren't sure how to get started. There's a huge barrier to entry on social media, and it's not the app, right? It's free to download the app. The hard part is getting yourself on camera and feeling comfortable and coming up with the ideas and understanding how to leverage the platform. And then you do it, right? You put yourself out there, and your first 5 videos flop and nobody watches them. And so now you've reaffirmed, well, this is terrible. I should have never done this. Everyone is making fun of me, and only 5 people saw it. And so, the idea from the course there started to say, could we help to reach these folks, not the 25-year-old medical students necessarily, but the folks who are out in their career, they're practicing, and they're interested in getting involved in social media, but they're worried for a host of reasons. They don't know what they can and can't say. They don't know how to create the content or what tools to use, or they just want some help and refinement on the messaging. And we bundled that all together. So it's a we call it 101 and 201. And so 101 is kind of all the basics and how to use the apps and where your content should live and script writing and those type of things. And 201 is really starting to pull on some of those things that I initially got very excited about on, how do you hook someone? What should be the structure of a video, right? Because we're all playing a game for attention there. And even if you have amazing content, you still have to play the game. You have to get people to watch. And so 201 dives deep into some of those techniques and strategies. We actually brought along my editor and kind of gave away all the tips and little secrets that he does on editing styles, text overlays, the duration of certain transitions, and how we keep things engaged. So it goes pretty deep, and we're very excited. Nobody's gotten to do the course yet. We're keeping a lock on it until till January 1st, but stay tuned kind of for information on that. It's been a many years in the making, and excited to finally see it in the daylight.
That sounds like a great resource. I think, I'll probably use it myself because it's as a fledgling podcaster and grower of a system. I think that's important information for lots of people to have. And there are lots of not just emergency physicians, but other providers and others in other specialties who have a lot of great ideas and content, may be great at educating in their local conference room,
Sure.
but this kind of expands it beyond that. I think that seems to be the goal, to take what people do sometimes very well in front of a small audience locally and allow them to expand it.
It's spot on, Till. It's actually how I got the push over into doing the social myself. Because a lot of folks say, well, "Why'd you do this?" And I mentioned earlier, as a teaching fellow, I was teaching to lecture halls of 200 medical students, and I think it was like I don't think there were videos at the time. I think I made maybe a image post, and I want to say like 600 or 800 people saw it. It went, for a small account at the time, it effectively went like viral, and I'm like, oh man, I just taught the lecture hall of 200 people, and then I gave a tidbit of that information online, and like 600 or 800 people saw it in minutes. And so it got me thinking, well, how many more people could I educate? Could I reach if I really grew this thing? And that was kind of the start of the arc. And I think that that's what really excites me. That's why I have kind of dedicated the time to making this course. I want others to feel that. I want others to be able to distribute that kind of passion and expertise to a larger audience.
That's great. You interact with people from all walks of at least medical life, from industry and providers all over. As we mentioned, there is burnout, and this is a time of stress for emergency medicine. We could recount the statistics, but we've all heard them. Do you have advice, or what advice do you have for others who are struggling at the bedside and are really good clinicians and are delivering really good care, but are saying, I can't do this anymore, and I need quality of life, quality professional life, quality personal life?
I'll do my best to give a comment on that. And I always preface this. I think it's important to be aware of your situation, and I am very fortunate to say that I work part-time clinically, and both on both sides, right? I'm very grateful that I get to come in and still work clinically, but also I recognize the privilege of doing additional work outside of this and having the break, and that is not always possible for others. So I preface the answer with that. What I'll say, and what I had found for myself, is every shift I try to take one moment, doesn't even have to be a whole patient encounter, but one moment where I felt like I truly helped someone. Because I think we've probably all felt this. You go through a shift and you think to yourself, I think I've done absolutely nothing for society in that shift, right? I moved individuals through the department, but I don't think I really helped anyone. Which is not true, right? It just becomes a grind. There's a lot of grind in what we do, and so I try to pause at the beginning of the shift and at the end of the shift. And I remind myself at the beginning, I'm here to help someone today. I want to make a difference for somebody's life today in whatever small way that can be. And at the end, I'll challenge myself, after the notes are done, and I'll say, you know, what gave me the most recharge internally today? And there is something there in every shift, even the tough ones. And I think having that kind of presence of mind in itself makes the encounters a little bit more impactful. Makes me, again, I'm happy to share mine. Like, I love educating, like I said, and so to me, every test result, within reason, right? We don't have time for everything, but when you go back into a patient room, I like to try to pick one element of their care to really explain to them so that they can understand and feel empowered on their care. And that, for me at least, is typically what I remember at the end of the shift. Somebody from those explanations is very grateful. And they will usually say the words, I've never had someone take the time to explain that to me that way. Now, again, we're in a tough, stressed system, and it's very difficult to find that time. And I by no means do that with every patient. But when I can find that time to take a pause, spend the extra 3 or 4 minutes and go through, for example, why did we do a dimer and why are you now getting a CT, right? Rather than just clicking the buttons and coming back after going, hey, good news, weird lab test, but it's all negative. So you're all set to go home. That doesn't feel great, versus this is what we did. This is why we're looking for it. And this is why it's really scary. But thankfully, you don't have that problem today, right? And that's why we're going through the process. So taking that pause for me, brings some joy back. I think it helps.
That's great advice and sort of speaks to the classic positioning of physicians as teachers. And I think that you've turned that passion into another role, but also use that at the bedside. So thank you for that. So it is current way. It's relatively easy to find you by Googling your name and finding what you do. But tell us if you want to learn a bit more about what you do, and on January 1st, access more learning about social media. How should one find you?
I appreciate that. You can always find me on social media at See the Medlife, SEE the Medlife. You can go to our website. Of course, if you're interested on the corporate side, it's medfluencers.com, and happy to get in contact with folks there. But for anything kind of social media related, you're interested in talking with me, more of my personal the website and the social media, happy to connect with anyone there. And yeah, more information to come on the course. We're not quite ready with a launch page there, but I figured it's worth bringing up because we are very excited.
No, very good. Certainly an area that people want to learn more about. And I appreciate your insights there. You've done remarkable work taking the clinical space and providing something that's good for individuals and good for customers and good for society to sort of take disinformation out and get out news about things that are important, medications, devices, and otherwise. So thank you for that. So I thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your perspectives and experience.
Thanks, Tel. Appreciate you having me on.
And thank you for joining us in this installment of our M-Centric podcast, The Shift Report. And special thanks to Dr. Adam Goodcoff for sharing his important insights. As you heard, he can be found at medfluencers.com and at CSEE The Medlife on social media. For more content, networking, and innovation in the world of emergency medicine, please visit mcentric.org. Thank you.